So let's continue our discussion of looking at revenue. And what we saw was that we've got these 4 different classifications for revenue. Right, we had our gate receipts, we had our broadcasting, we had our licensing income, and we had our stadium, right? So what we saw last time was that when we're looking at a lot of this gate revenue, a lot of this gate revenue can be shared so that this guy could be like, say, alpha RH plus 1 minus alpha RA, right, where we had RH here being our home revenue, our RA being our away team revenue, and then alpha the percent that's shared. And what we saw with an example of the New York Islanders and the New York Rangers was that it could actually make sense to actually field a worse quality team, right? A low quality team, because you can actually make more money doing that than you could with trying to have a high quality team. So for example, we saw the Rangers had their profit here. We said 0.6 of 36, and they'd get 40% of the Islanders' revenue at 9.8, and then they had a payroll here of 34.1. And we saw that this left them with a deficit of 4.58 million, whereas the profits for our Islanders, 0.6 times 19.8, right? They're keeping 60% of their gate revenue. They're getting 40% of the revenue from the away team, being the Rangers in this example, 18 million. 8.28 million, right? And you recall we said, well, these are real numbers, right? These aren't just contrived. So this is what actual gate revenue was and what actual payroll was in a season. I think it was the 95-96 season. And if these teams were the only 2 teams in the league and they only played each other, right, the Islanders are clearly way ahead. They're up $8.2 million. The Rangers are down $4.5 million. And in fact, I mean, you can think of it like this. The Islanders have spent $18 million to earn $8 million in revenue or in profit. I mean, that's fantastic, right? It's almost 50% rate of return. So what we saw here is that in essence, it could pay to be frugal. And in fact, if you include all of these other different sources of income that you could have, right, like broadcasting, licensing, stadium, etc., in the real world, you would have the Islanders operating income would have gone from 3.9 million, these are real numbers, to 10.38 million, right, if they had revenue sharing. And the Rangers in that year, their operating income was 10.2 million for that year. It would have fallen basically to 3.72 million. Right. So what we see here is that revenue sharing almost always transfers revenue from our high-performing teams to our low-performing teams, right? And if you think about it, I mean, that makes perfect sense. I mean, that's what revenue sharing is, right? I mean, you're sharing revenue. You've got to share. I mean, what is the rich teams, the revenue can't go up when they're sharing revenue with the low revenue teams. It has to go down. I mean, it has to average out, right? So, in other words, what you have here is you've got team owners that pay a lot in salaries, right, in order to field a good team. Are in effect subsidizing owners that don't pay much. So if you have this subsidization that's occurring, I mean, you can ask yourself, I mean, in essence, you have the people that are saying, okay, we're going to field a good team. You have, in essence, the Dallas Cowboys subsidizing bad teams. Why do it? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it adds some stability to the market. So, for example, the NFL was founded in 1920. It took them 16 years to field the same sets of teams in 2 consecutive seasons. Right? So basically 1922, right? You've got a set of teams there. And that set of teams in 1922 is different from the set of teams in 1921, which is different than the set of teams in 1920, which was different from the set of teams in 1923, which is different from the set of teams in 1924. How can you have a fan base? How can you have people getting excited about things if you're constantly changing teams, right? It's the Dallas Cowboys. No, we're the Fort Worth Rangers. Nope, we changed again. Now we're the Amarillo Armadillos. I mean, whatever, right? The team's constantly moving, constantly opening new teams, teams constantly folding. But secondly, and more importantly, it decreases everyone's cost as a team owner. Why would it decrease everyone's costs to have revenue sharing? If you field a really, really, really good team, how much does that cost? A lot. So how can sharing revenue decrease your costs? What's the probability that any team in the NFL is going to win all other games in any given season? It's pretty low, but the probability is not zero, right? Because it has happened. What's the probability that the New York Yankees will win all of their 162 games? It's extremely low. I would say the odds are so low they are essentially almost zero. Let's assume there's no revenue sharing, and there's not much revenue sharing in baseball. You got two teams, New York Yankees and Springfield Cardinals. Those are the two teams. The Yankees want to win every single game. What would they do? Let's assume that's their goal. Their goal is they want to win every single game. Okay. How? Keep going. I mean, the Springfield Cardinals would have some good players. How do you keep those players from going to the Springfield Cardinals and make them go to the New York Yankees? Yeah, you buy all the talent, right? So if you think about it, one of the things that you can see here is like revenue sharing. Basically what this does, revenue sharing decreases the benefits of doing what? Because if the New York Yankees have to share the revenue with the Springfield Cardinals, and they buy, there's a pool of players. Here's the pool of players. These are your pro players. These are your other players. Okay? Let's assume the New York Yankees buy all of these guys. These guys go to the Springfield Cardinals. Right? This is your 46-year-old college professors. Right? This is everybody else. So it's the 46-year-old college professors versus the college players, right? I mean, if I'm playing baseball against, if all of the professors get together, if we get 9 college professors together and we go out and we play the MSU baseball team, who's going to win? The MSU baseball team, right? You guys think we're going to win? No. Dude, I can't get up in the morning. My back hurts. I'm not going to be able to run to first base. I'm going to stroll, right? So here's the players. The New York Yankees have bought all the players. Here's what's left. Crap, right? If they have to share the revenue, what would they do? I mean, they're not just buying a squad. They're buying all of the players that are available. You see what I'm saying? Their squad is 7,000 people in size. And then there's this. If they have to share the revenue, though, what does that mean? What would they do?
Decrease their profit so they can pay a bunch of money for all the good players.
Exactly. Revenue sharing decreases the benefits of paying high salaries. You've decreased the benefit of having a really, really, really good team because you have to share the revenue anyway. If they didn't have to share the revenue, then maybe buy all 7,000 players. India won 7,000 players against 9 46-year-old college professors. They win every time. So, if the benefits of having a good team have gone down, what does that mean in terms of player pay? Exactly. Player pay goes down too. And not just the good players, but also the bad players. Why would the bad players' pay go down also?
Pay the good ones more.
Yeah, it's all relative. It's a relative decrease in everyone's pay, right? So the really, really good players, the LeBron Jameses, aren't making $100 million. They would have made $300 million. And since LeBron's gone from 300 to 100 million, Joe Smith, who barely got on the team, rather than making $2 million, he would have made $6 million, or whatever the number is, right? So let's look at some of these other revenue sources. Let's look at stadiums. The licensing income is pretty straightforward. Licensing income is basically just, like we said, every time you sell a hat, you get 10%. Every time you sell a shirt, you get 12%, whatever. So let's look at the stadium revenue. So here we've got things like parking, concessions, and luxury box seating, right? And interestingly enough, what we do is we only share a small portion of luxury box seating. So let's suppose we have a luxury box. That sells for $500,000 with 20 seats. What our owner can do is claim each seat is worth $50. So now you've got revenue basically of only $2,500 in basically ticket sales. So $2,500 per game for these 8 games. And so we're actually going to share about $20,000 of revenue. Now this $20,000 that's subject to being shared, of course, $12,000 we get to keep. $8,000 goes to the away team. And so, because once again in the NFL we have this 60-40 split. So we have our box here that's for $500,000, of which we're only going to share $8,000 in this revenue. $492,000 in revenue we get to keep. So, if we're an NFL owner, what do we want to do? We want to sell a lot of box seats, and in fact, we want to convert as much seating as we can to luxury box seating because it's not subject to our revenue sharing. The only revenue sharing that we have is the actual seat itself. not the price that we're actually getting for those seats. We just say, oh, the seats were $50. So let's think about what this means. Here's our team in this location, and we say, we want a new stadium because we want to build new luxury box seating. And the city says, no, we're not going to do that. So what does the team have an incentive to do? We're going to move over here to City B. City B will build us our stadium, and they will build us our stadium with our new luxury box seating, right? In essence, what you have here is that thanks to this luxury box seating, these stadiums, they're not physically obsolete. So why are they tearing them down and building new ones? They're not physically obsolete, but they are economically obsolete, right? If you have a stadium that was built 20 years ago, there's a whole lot more revenue in luxury seating today than there was 20 years ago. The stadium should still be standing, and in fact could still be standing. It could be still physically be standing. You could still physically have games in there. But from an economic standpoint, the stadium itself is old, it's obsolete, you want to get rid of it. We can use things like this to help explain why teams like the Rams and the Raiders moved initially from the second largest market in the country to St. Louis, right? And Oakland. What did they do? Build us a new stadium. No, we're not going to do that. Screw you. People in the city of St. Louis are going to build us a stadium. They're going to give us luxury box seating. We're going to make a whole lot more money. That revenue we don't have to share. Right? You've got the Oilers. Left Houston. This is the 10th largest market. For Nashville. It's the 40th largest market. Why would you move to a smaller market? Why do that? For the new stadium. The Nashville market will build us a new stadium with luxury box seating. Oh, and by the way, even if gate revenue goes down here as opposed to here, gate revenue goes down here as opposed to here, that's okay, because why? Because we're sharing revenue anyway. So even if we move to a smaller market, not only can we get a new stadium with luxury box seating, which means we can keep more of this type of revenue that we don't have to share ourselves. Any hit that we do take on gate receipts, that hit is diminished anyway because we have all of the revenue sharing with all of the other teams. So once again, I mean, same thing, we're still using this idea that we want this revenue sharing, right, to add the stability to the league. But we also have these other ideas here. Right, that it helps our competitive balance, that it helps to ensure that these teams are going to, it's not always going to be the New York Giants beating the Nashville Oilers, right? That's boring. What's the point of that? It's not always going to be the New York Yankees beating the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. That's boring. What's the point of that, right? I think I'm going to let us go a little early today. I don't have time to get the next one done. I mean, I do have time. Guys, I got 5, 10, 15 minutes. But I don't have time to get it all in one cohesive unit. I don't really feel that good anyway. And so why don't we'll just go for today. So we'll pick it up from here.